waiting for Benny Boy. Ben.
Chesney, how's it going?
Good. I want to apologize for last week because while I love people engaging, it's not good if you are leaving and we didn't finish the blessing reviewing it together, which is ideal. And that's why even though this specific bracha, which has a lot of potential to be very controversial or a whole long dialogue, I'm going to try to keep it more in a specific narrative, and just reminding ourselves that like I tell Kirk sometimes, in this stream right now, we're not questioning the existence of God or is the Jewish decision the right one. We're clearly on that path, and we have certain narratives that we take on. That doesn't mean that you and I are not aware of other narratives or other historical or theological differences that there might be. Obviously we're giving here a certain vision that is a tradition in a Orthodox Jewish community. So I'm just going to preface that so I'm not jumping back and forth constantly. But let's do a quick chazara also from last week, and that way you'll also get to finish up what we finished.
Okay, have you bring that up?
Hello, Yoav.
Okay.
Take it away.
Blessing of justice. Shiva Shoftenu Kabarishona. It's a brief review. The blessing is not only about improving courts, it is about restoring divine justice to Israel. We ask for the return of the Sanhedrin, the restoration of Torah authority, and a society where judgment reveals God's presence. This blessing follows kibbutz galuyot. So following the blessing that mentions kibbutz galuyot, true Torah justice requires national sovereignty, independence, and Jewish self-rule. Okay, so
we're talking about the sequence of where these blessings are, because it's only natural for me to ask for justice or have court systems. For that, I need electricity, and for electricity, I need power plants, and for power plants, I need to have national sovereignty.
Yeah. Okay, main problem with legal systems: they become technical, bureaucratic, and they're impersonal. People encounter systems instead of justice.
Right, we all know this whole idea. If you go to the court, you can actually find justice over there.
Yeah. Moshe Rabbeinu as the ideal model.
Right, we said this as Jethro comes to his son-in-law Moses and says, this is not working. You can't take on teaching all these people, or holding court for all these people. And Moses' response, that we just read over here, is it's more than just it's more about answering who this goat is owed to. It's about actually them being participating in actual justice, which is divine justice, which is actually seeing God in that system. So that's why it's very important for him that before we make that system, right? We said obviously Moses, coming from being a scribe, coming from an Egyptian background, he would have known of hierarchies like this. But it's important that first everyone in Israel realize what the standard is. It's there, you're there to meet God, following which I can then now go into making a system.
Right, you learn from the master, and then you're able to take on a little bit more of the responsibility. So judgment was when it came through when it came through Moses, it was Torah teaching, it was a divine encounter, and it was a spiritual guidance. Core principle here is that mishpat equals mifugashim Elohim, meaning justice is an encounter with God. Judges and counselors. We spoke about the differences between those because that it mentions that in the blessing.
Right. Exactly.
Restore judges is Torah truth, referring to Torah truth. Restore our counselors is referring to the political leadership. So the sequence matters here. First is justice defines truth, and then leadership implements it.
I'll just mention how this becomes very relevant, unfortunately, in politics today. As you know, in Israel, there's a whole argument about sort of the spirit of the army, sort of the Articles of Association, so to speak, or its charter talks about how it doesn't have winning a battle as one of the values, right? Because that's seemingly it's like a problematic value, and that's a question, which is like you have this idea, right, that then has to be implemented on the ground. But if they're not aligned properly, or the base is the foundations are fickle, then it's very problematic.
Right. I was in my mind. I was thinking about the Constitution, right, in the U.S., where you have this is something that is right. That is the truth that then the whole system works from, or it tries to implement and understand trade-offs and like edge cases and things like that. But that's the article that everybody draws from.
Correct.
Can I? Is it okay if I read?
Sure. I think let's see if we.
Well, let just okay. So we're gonna continue from two necessary systems.
Okay. Two necessary systems. Divine truth. I don't know how to read the Hebrew. Sorry.
Mishpat and HaTorah. Mishpat HaTorah, which is divine truth.
Spiritual justice.
Okay, both of those things you're getting out of Torah. Justice is divine truth, and spiritual justice. That's what I'm getting out of the Torah Mishpat. And then there's also something called Din Malchut.
And social order and practical governance.
Correct. Now we spoke about this example, right? You can read it out.
Example discussed, murder case without proper witnesses, Torah court cannot convict, state authority may still need to act, shows why both systems are necessary.
Right, I'm saying the Torah has its values and its systems, and part of it is saying that like we can't, I mean, there is a process, right? And you do not want to be sentencing anyone if you didn't actually have these witnesses see them. However, we said if that happens once in a blue moon, then that's fantastic. But if because of this system, this is happening constantly, then you obviously have to have another authority that allows you then to deal with it.
Yeah.
Wait, so question here.
Yeah.
This state authority may still need to act. The Torah cannot convict, but the Sanhedrin, the court, had officers. It had shotrim. Those will be the one that will implement the sentence. No, so
no, but it's not just a sentence over here. We're saying according to the Torah law, right? Mm-hmm. You have a Torah law that says in this crazy case that we gave, someone runs to the building, he says I'm going to kill him, but no one saw the actual murder take place. Right. Torah law says like it's still not good enough. The standard's too high. Comes a society and says like, okay, now we have other social laws that are again built on top of this justice law that we have. And that allows us now to plug these holes, which is like, okay, but we can't live in a society that because people are still killing right now, and that standard can't be kept.
I see. So you're saying the Torah lays out there's a groundwork for basic cases, or like let's call it minimal cases, right? But then and it can convict. I mean, the Sanhedrin can convict, but for a murder case without proper witnesses, this is an example of something they cannot convict for, which a society that lives within that might need to create their own judgments.
Correct. Assuming it's rampant, right? Like you could be like, the Torah doesn't have a discussion right now about. I'm trying to think.
I mean,
the Torah does. The Torah comes and says like, okay, if you build a building, right, on your roof, you have to build a guardrail. It might even be incorporated, that might even be taken already from the Code of Hammurabi. But the point being is that covers like a certain amount of safety. Like it's like as society grows and more things happen, like there could be things that like are in the spirit of the Torah, but the Torah doesn't have the way to actually specifically answer this right now. It requires a system right? That again is feeding off of that justice, that divine justice system, but this can still plug these things, right? The Torah doesn't discuss street lights.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hello, Stephen. I hope all is well, sir.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so ideal Jewish society: 4 institutions: king, melech, judge, shoftim, priest, kohen, prophet, navi.
Right. The acronym for this is Mishkan, Mem Shin Chaf Nun, which is the tabernacle. Correct. And the goal is, go ahead.
Goal: society reflects justice, spirituality, leadership, and vision.
Right. We want our leaders to be like mirrors, basically, which allow these things to come through. And that way, whether it's even if you have a system that has in it monarchy and has in it clergy and has in it like the anarchists, like the prophets, so to speak, right? As long as they're all mirroring a God, all those systems are, then that would be like what a real theocracy is. We spoke about how Josephus calls this, that like a real theocracy is that the Torah is present sort of, or God's will is present in all these different systems.
Okay. Sorrow of exile: without proper justice and leadership, there is sorrow and spiritual blockage. Rambam: prophecy requires joy.
Okay, that's from the blessing. Sorry.
Also in the blessing, it says, remove from us the sorrow of exile.
Right.
Yeah. Rambam: prophecy requires joy. Exile prevents complete joy. Chain discussed: no sovereignty, no full Torah life, no true joy, no prophecy. Now I have a question related to this, if that's okay.
Sure.
Which is, do you think this ties into a reason for your support of Zionism as a spiritual movement?
It's not my support. That's what we played. That's what we've been praying for thousands of years. Bring us back to this place.
But is that why you support Zionism as a political movement to facilitate this?
Of course.
Okay. And reign over us, you alone. Question: why ask for systems and also ask for God alone to rule? Answer:
right? We say, give us our judges, give us our counselors, but now we're saying rule us alone.
Answer: systems should become transparent vessels for God. So this is this related to the Kabbalistic idea of redeeming the shells or redeeming the husk?
To a certain point, like to a certain extent, because this really more connects to the idea that, like, we're one with God and we ultimately also want the same thing. But
yeah. This reminds.
It can be more practical with that. I think it relates to the discussion that we mentioned of calling judges Elohim, right?
Yeah.
That they need to reflect.
Correct.
Yeah,
they personally need to reflect him, but I'm saying, to Kirk's point, God, we believe that right? You give sustenance to everything. So we obviously want to identify him everywhere, and hence we also make blessings when we eat the apple, right? Like every moment is getting reoriented through the prism of God.
Yeah, this reminds me of a quote by what's it called? What's his name? Albert Einstein, which goes, man is but one, or human being is but one person separated in time and space. And there's a separation of us from the universe, which is created by the delusion of our consciousness. And the striving to free oneself from the delusion of separateness is the one issue of true religion.
Everyone's wanting to come back to the one.
Yeah,
and also how to do that. Do you? We just celebrated Lag BaOmer in commemoration of the great sage Shimon Bar Yochai, and the famous story about him coming out of the cave after 13 years after he ran away from the Romans. He comes out of the cave and he's like, the next level of holiness, because he was just immersed in prayer and study of Torah. And he sees people participating in seemingly worldly things, and fire comes out of his eyes, and he starts burning these people.
Yeah.
And, right? God sends him back and says, "Did you come out to destroy my world?" And he goes back and he comes down. But the idea is also even the oneness of even wanting to connect to God, right? Think of the sons of Aaron, right? They also wanted to be one with God. They played with fire and they got what they wanted, right? They got burnt and they're with God. but is that we're we're here to live ultimately as well. And it's a very hard balance to sanctify and find God in all things while still not losing yourself in that.
Yeah, well, I was also going to say this. Also, I've been recently. I was told that a philosophy community I'm in, we're going to read the Ethics by Baruch Spinoza, and I've read excerpts of his book, the Ethics. And to my understanding, Spinoza believed that mind and matter are both substances, or both or properties of one underlying substance, which he calls naturan naturans, which is kind of the God or nature. And I know Einstein believed in Spinoza's God. And so I think he may have been ripping this from Judaism, but the difference is that unlike in Spinozism, Judaism also says that it's not just intellectual love of God, but also a revelatory tradition.
Agreed.
So
let's
I'll
keep
continue
on.
reading.
Yeah, sure.
Question. I think we already did the question. Leadership should reflect God, not replace him.
Mm-hmm. Hashem levado
Means removal of barriers, direct relationship with God. Final
we're
section.
saying that we're not there yet. One day we want to be in the place where there are no barriers, or we could eventually just fully immerse ourselves with him. We're not there yet.
Final section. Stress justice, objective truth, compassion, mercy. I don't know how to read the Hebrew.
Talking about mishpat and tzedakah. So mishpat means strict justice, objective truth. Tzedakah means compassion and mercy. Yet we're going to do two of these things together. Jewish ideal, unite both together. We speak about often the unification of opposites or the unification of values. That Judaism wants constantly to be trying to unify these things.
Yeah, Jewish ideal, unite both together. David Hamelech, justice that the guilty person experiences as kindness because it restores him morally. Ultimate vision, divine presence revealed through justice itself.
That's it. I just mentioned about the king. There was a question about like, how did King David? The Talmud talks about how did King David both do justice and mercy together, and they gave 3 different versions of how he did it. That he would pay out of his own pocket, and we showed how each one of those are not like either one is missing and the other isn't there, or both you're getting sort of at like in the diluted version of both. But really is that even when if you are a vessel for God, then if you act with proper justice, then even the person that now is accepting this just ruling, which might even mean he's losing his house right now, right? He sees that as mercy because he understands that he was going back to what Moses tells Jethro. He understands that he was in the presence of God, right? And because he understands he was in the presence of God, there's a mercy to it, even though it's coming in the form of justice. All right, let's bring up our next prayer. I mentioned to Ben, and I'll mention it again, this prayer that we're going to go over right now is a controversial one, but we're going to try to stick to, and later on people could discuss, and I'm sure this also was discussed in Jacob's channel in the past, but right now we're just going to try to go through a certain understanding, reading of this. I'm saying this is not my only explanation for these things, but this is the one that we're going to explore today. All right.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
May I read the English after you read the Hebrew?
If you want to, no problem.
Yeah.
ומשנים אל תהי תקווה, וכל הרשעה כרגע תאבד, וכל אויביך מהרה יחרטו, והזדים מהרה תעקר ותשבר ותמגר, ותכניע במהרה בימינו. ברוך אתה אדוני שובר אויבים ומכניע זדים.
Oh, I thought you were supposed to say Hashem unless it's in a formal prayer context.
I mean, this is the full prayer context.
Okay.
And made the blessing as well.
Okay, so let there be no hope for informers, and may all wickedness instantly perish. May all the my screen's lagging real quick. What's the word?
Enemies.
Evidence of your people. Enemies of your people be swiftly cut off, and may you quickly uproot, crush, rout. What is this word? Rout and subdue the incident.
It's like to uproot.
No, rout, I think is like to make them like.
Sorry, you quickly uproot. Sorry, it says quickly uproot.
Yeah, routing is like when your enemy falls back.
And subdue the insolent. speedily in our days. Bless you, Hashem, creator of crusher of enemies and subduer of the insolent.
All right. How best to go about this? So we touched upon this, Ben, if you remember, in the beginning a few months ago when we were talking about the people of the Great Assembly, right? And we said that they were, because this blessing is not actually part of the traditional original Amidah, right? It is added later around the 2nd century in the study hall of Rabban Gamliel, formulated though by Shmuel Hakatan, Shmuel the Little. Yeah, you wanted to say something?
I was just going to say, is this the generation of the Tanaim? Or Amorim? Or like, because I know there's like the different generations.
I'm not hearing you right now.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm saying, is this the generation of the Tanaim?
That you're saying that are giving the thing I'm talking about right now, Shmuel Hakatan, and this is the time of the Tanaim, yes.
Yes, no, I was saying the prayer was written in the Tanaim time.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm sorry for just taking us back here again, but reminding us that Shmuel, Rabban Gamliel goes inside and he asks, right? He says, who here knows how to institute the blessing against the heretics? Now, what's interesting, and always it's important to note these things when reading the Talmud or being sensitive to, the fact that he's asking this question is letting us know that the need for such a blessing was basically like anticipated in advance. We spoke about this a little in the beginning, which is so like the actual formulation was delayed. You could imagine like on an Excel sheet, they left one tab open basically, because they sensed this was already coming, right? They know a future crisis which are eventually going to be happening. They knew already that, again, the temple, we spoke about this, the temple's falling apart. They see the status of the Jewish people, and that's why they condense all themselves in these blessings. But they weren't going to bring something up that didn't happen yet they, in their prophetic abilities, realize that something like this may occur, and that's why they need to leave a tab open, so to speak. So before we come back to how Shmuel did this, let's discuss who these minim are, right? Now, originally, the term minim is talking about early Jewish Christian sects.
Well, first of all, we hear this is the Ashkenaz.
This is the Malshinim, correct?
Right.
Which is switched again, because it used to be Hanotzrim, switched into the Minim, switched into the Malshinim. You're actually right, because we're going to, I guess, touch about it at the end to see like how, while this starts out as like a very intense blessing, remember, no, it's still not a curse. We could talk about that as well. It gets diluted as the relationship with our Christian brothers and sisters has changed and history has changed. This too has changed as well. But and sorry, that's a good point. I remember it as a meaning. But this is during the Second Temple, right? And we have multiple different sects of Judaism. And the blessing, again, is primarily targeted towards the group that later becomes Christianity. Now, it's always important to nuance, and here I think everyone knows this, that Christianity, again, is not yet a distinct form. It's still part of Judaism, right? The earlier followers are going to Beth Knesset, they're going to the temple, and they are bringing sacrifices, and they're wearing the tefillin, and they're joining together in prayer. And I'm actually talking about this with Yosef right now with Pete. But obviously, Jesus is reading from the prophets Haftarah as well, and Shul as well. So we're still very much connected, and they're embedded within the Jewish community. Now, why are they actually being removed? Again, this is one of the interpretations of why they're being removed. And I would say it's the way I was taught was that it's not actually initially about theology. It's more national, right? The very divisive issue is the breakdown of the Jewish national identity, right? Like Paul is teaching that there's no Jew and there's no Greek, meaning this unique identity of Israel is being dissolved, and all the nations are becoming spiritually equal, just through belief alone. And I would say like the breaking point is eventually when these groups are collaborating with the Roman authorities and they're participating in, persecution of other Jews. And again, even though there's like a fundamental principle of a Jew is not being removed from the nation just because of his beliefs, but breaking your national solidarity, it's too much. Now, then on top of that, there's a deeper theological problem, right? Which is the classic one, which is the unity of God, right? The Gemara explains that the 18 blessings we spoke about this, Ben, are corresponding to the 18 mentions of God in Shema. And then we added 9. So like the 19th that we're adding is corresponding to Hashem Echad. God is one. Why? Because again, this ordeal with the Christians was an attack on the divine unity, the way we understood it. And when Christianity is introducing the concept of the Trinity, or at the very least misunderstanding the concepts we spoke about of Israel, the Torah, and God being one, right? This is seen as a fragmentation of the absolute unity of Hashem, of God. And because of that, Birkat HaMinim is really protecting then the core Jewish theology of Yichud Hashem. Okay, so this is like the two different levels of why we're doing this, right? One is the national, two is the theological. But I would say I believe the beginning is really more the national, because I also at the beginning, Jesus is not necessarily seen as God, right? That's like a later on, it's like even if he's seen as Messiah, right? Later on, this, that takes on like another evolution, so to speak. Now, another thing that we spoke about is, again, we learned this together in the Ethics of the Father, that right? The world was created in 10 utterances, right? Now we know that there's only 9 that are explicit when it says Vayomar Elohim, and when God is speaking. And then the 10th one is a hidden one, which is Bereshit, right? Mm-hmm. In the beginning, or Genesis. And the Maharal, he explained is that the first utterance is really internal. It's not spoken outwardly. And this represents sort of the deep unity before expression even happened. And then you have this parallel structure. We have 9 utterances that God speaks to creation. And then there's 9 blessings that we speak back to God. In total, that is 18, and that is the 18 prayers that we're speaking to God, right? There's this back and forth conversation going. I think we spoke about this in the beginning. Mm-hmm. But then again, what do we do with the 19th, right? So the 19th, the heresy is damaging the level of Bereshit, of that first internal hidden unity. And therefore, the 19th blessing is a response to the rupture of unity itself, right? So we have these 9 that are 9 and 9 that are corresponding to each other. And then there's this last hidden one that had to be brought out once, again, unity is being attacked. Now, just a few more notes on just the development from my understanding, my humble understanding of Christianity, right? We have this early stage when they're still within Judaism. Again, we're speaking in very broad strokes right now because I told Ben that we're keeping it focused. But we, of course, have this internal debate between Paul and Peter, right? Are we keeping the mitzvot or not? The temple, the Beit HaMikdash, the temple, remember, is standing like 40 years still after Jesus dies. Then we have this separation grows, the theology evolves, and the national identity is abandoned. And I would say, again, the core claim at that point is that Israel is no longer the chosen nation. And there's, exile is being interpreted as, the destruction, God is abandoning Israel. And there's this, existential turn, right? God is disappeared. This is very dramatic, obviously, that the Shekhinah is leaving. And we've got into that, how I see Christians see Jesus, but that's a later conversation. But this also leads to a theological reinterpretation. The Trinity is on the scene. So, and hence we're at where we are today. Now, why is this a blessing and not a curse, though? And this is also, I think, a crucial point to realize that it is a blessing, and it's a blessing really to remove destructive forces, right? So there's a famous wife of the Tana Rabbi Meir, who also died. We also commemorated his death recently. Her name is Bruria, and she teaches in Hebrew. In English, it would be "Let the sins cease, not the sinners." Right? Like basically, like I don't want. I just want bad things to stop, but I have nothing against the people doing them. I understand it's not them that are the problem. But here, we're not actually. There's no request for repentance. I'm not saying that the Christians should repent. Again, and this is because we have to understand the context. The danger at the time was immediate and existential. And the only solution was really removal of the influence. And that's why there's like a social function to this, right? The blessing has like a practical effect. It forced separation. A heretic can't come in the synagogue and now say this blessing or even answer amen to this blessing, right? It's too hurtful. It's too damaging. And therefore, they are excluding themselves from synagogue life because of that. Again, and like you said, the original version that we found in the Cairo Geniza talks about how all the Christians should perish. And later the text is obviously softened. And this is either because of censorship or like Ben and you and I were discussing, there's been obviously historical changes. Rav Kook is someone who reinterprets the concept mean. And he says mean is someone who has an active hatred for Israel and like in intention and in action. So what's not included is someone who acts wrongly unintentionally, or he lacks like awareness, basically. So that's why there's a lot of people out there that are quote unquote anti-Semites. However, I wouldn't put them under this category because I feel like many times they're unintentionally saying these things, or they're just a tremendous amount of stupidity. But
minim though, is that not referring to someone from within Judaism? Like that.
Someone within Judaism, correct?
Right. So minim
hatred for Israel, you're hating yourself. You want to like
right. So I think that's my understanding of the blessing that it was referring to. Also, when it was referring to the Notzrim, the Christian, it was referring to that Jewish sect specifically that was within Judaism.
Correct.
So not in its current form. But to that and to any other thing that basically breaks down the, like you said, the integrity, the unity from within Judaism. Yeah.
Now I'm going back for a second to Shmuel HaKatan, little Samuel. To be clear, he wasn't vertically challenged, right? His name was Shmuel HaKatan. So this goes back to the challenges we have. Like, again, how did we come about with this blessing? Because as you recall, we have no prophecy. And we spoke about in the beginning, the only way we could pray is as if we're prophets, right? Formulating the blessing requires the sensitivity to the divine will. And also, there's another issue, which is this blessing is containing very harsh language. So you risk a personal bias over here. And sinat chinam, right? Unnecessary and unwarranted hatred was rampant everywhere. Because of this, we needed someone very specific. So if you recall, Ben, when we learned about Shmuel HaKatan in Ethics of the Fathers, Shmuel HaKatan is known for saying, "Befolo ivecha al tismach," right? When your enemies fall, do not rejoice. Right, so he was already known. And remember when we said about the Ethics of the Father, when they would quote Hu Haya Omer, right, is because what does that mean that Shmuel would say this? As in, Shmuel was known for embodying this teaching. So Shmuel was known on the scene in Rabbi Gamliel's school. He was known as someone that was completely free of personal hatred. He also retained the trace of prophecy. You saw Samuel the Little because he echoed the prophet Samuel, and also at his death, there's a few prophecies that he's known to have said as well. So the Talmud basically has identified someone specific who, from personality traits, right? He is someone that can handle this kind of blessing, and from a prophetic space, right? He is also there to be sensitive to that as well. So he is the person that could actually formulate this bracha. Now, its placement in the middle over here is also, it's, next to the redemption soon of the return to Zion. Also, we're talking about the ingathering of the exiles, because again, the heresy is claiming that Hashem is abandoning Israel. The response is the return of the Shekhinah proves God never left, right? And hence, we believe that 1948 was a theological nightmare, because, the light of Elijah is rising. Now, we also have to be sensitive, though, to the historical modern changes that have happened, right? We have Vatican II, and, we're removing the accusation of Jesus's guilt, of Jewish guilt on killing Jesus. And there's this letter of Pope Paul, to the Jews, that's attributed to him. Not everyone agrees that this letter is authentic, but there it's pretty crazy what he says over there. But really an understanding that they see themselves now as Cain, and we were Abel, and how horrible they behaved. 2015, you again have a statement from the Vatican about fighting anti-Semitism and stopping to evangelize, and that God's promises are irrevocable. So there's a theological shift. Obviously, also when Israel returns, the world begins to reassess its theology. I'm going to be speaking to a rabbi soon who runs, another student of Rabbi Shirky, and who runs the Institute, the Great Spirit of Money too. And he also talks about often how, also in Islam, obviously in the Quran, you see this about us coming back to the land, but also he talks about a conversation with the Dalai Lama, where the Dalai Lama basically was surprised that we as Jews don't realize who we are. And that's sort of an invitation from the world, right? Which is, as the Jewish people rebuild, right? And the faith in Hashem becomes clear in the world, fulfilling the prophecies of Isaiah and all the others. Slowly but surely, we could potentially even get to a place where a blessing like this, who knows, once we have a Sanhedrin, can maybe even be softened even more, or completely changed if not necessary. But like you mentioned, Ben, from Christians to Minim to Malshinim, it slowly but surely gets diluted as we make our way closer and closer towards a unified vision of God. But Yosef, tell us, teach us.
Oh, I have not been listening. I was working. I'm sorry. So I don't know what you said already. I don't want to totally derail you.
You're not derailing. I'm actually, as far as I'm concerned, I think we just put a nice bow on this blessing right now. But I was giving a specific narrative to it. But just give us your thoughts on this blessing.
So I did catch the end of that narrative. So I'll say we actually have some good evidence that this text predates when it mentioned Christians. That this probably actually goes back to being an anti-sectarian text.
Mm-hmm.
As in before the Cairo Geniza, where it says Christians, you saying an earlier version?
Yeah. So there's not, we don't have an explicit this full text, but we have elements of this in even earlier pieces, including a parallel in the Dead Sea Scrolls itself, which is kind of interesting. Which means that other sects, not just rabbis, were saying maybe some very similar things about not including other sects within their, or not necessarily not including other sects within a group, because this isn't necessarily against other sects, but it is against government collaborators of the sectarian period, which was a huge issue. It had nothing to do with Christianity, right? The people telling the Romans, this group of Jews is going to rebel against you, or that group, or this one, doesn't believe in your authority. Right, that predates.
So you would agree that's why the language is so harsh. We spoke about this, which there's a practical element to this, which is I need to act now. I need this to be very clear, because if I'm being ratted out, so to speak, it's life or death.
Yeah, and it's also interesting because even this also gets into not going before, not trying to resolve disputes before secular courts, right? Especially ones that really hated Jews. because like things just won't go good for anybody, even if technically someone wins in such a case. And yeah, I mean, it's not just necessarily like political like rebellion type things. I think it's more than that. And what's interesting to that point is like there's a parallel. Like Paul himself says, like he doesn't want Christians appealing to non-Christian courts, right? Like he has a parallel to the rabbinic exegesis on the same exact concept, where he seems to be drawing on actually very similar ideas as well. So there is kind of an interesting thing here where you get this: don't appeal to like outsiders. Outside things are dangerous. You know, that's how you end up with the Romans taking over Jerusalem from the two Hasmonean brothers who are fighting on who should be king, and like really starting. Actually, we can even say it's earlier than that. We can say it's even pre-Antiochus, where like whether it's the assassination of the high priest when he's away in Syria, or Onias the fourth fleeing to Egypt, right? Like there was a lot of infighting, and there was a general kind of like growing acknowledgement of like appealing to outside forces to try to adjudicate your infighting is actually not neutral, but makes everything worse for everybody.
As we felt on our own skin.
Right. So I think that is to some degree, and we can actually go back even further, right? Because the prophets themselves like don't want the Jewish kings to get involved in international politics, somewhat for similar reasons, right? There is
They don't
sort
even
of
want kings.
they don't want kings, but forget kings, like they don't want the Jewish Israelite Judean states to like ally with the Babylonians, or to ally with the Assyrians, or ally with the Egyptians, right? Especially like I think it's especially Isaiah and Amos, or Jeremiah, whatever, right? Where they're like, doing this, you're going to get in trouble. Do not like try to involve yourselves in others. Do not bring others into your affairs, kind of mentality. So yeah, so I do think it's interesting because I think it goes from kind of like that to sectarianism to eventually like Christianity, which is kind of like peak sectarianism, and then it kind of backs off from that narrative again, and more generalizes. But then there's a real big shift in the 15th, 16th century with this prayer, where it actually becomes entirely internalized. So it's not even about external like people anymore. It's about like your Yetzer Hara. It's about your evil inclination that you're asking for to be destroyed. And that happens before the Hasidim, but though it's kind of part of the same trend of like internalizing a lot of the threat and like asking God to destroy this within yourself.
But Yosef, you would agree that it's still associated heavily with Christians, like as known like in the Jewish community.
So this is where one of those places where there's like the folk understanding, the technical rabbinic understanding, like
folk understanding.
Right, the folk understanding, I think, continue to associate it with Christians, but ironically, it stayed more associated with Christians in Muslim lands than it did in Christian lands, because the version in Christian lands stopped mentioning Christians a lot earlier.
Correct.
So Muslim land Jews still understood this as an invocation against the Christians, as opposed to Jews living in Christian lands, not because there wasn't animosity between Jews and Christians in Christian lands, and not even necessarily because of censorship, though there was some of that of this prayer. But like so the folk understanding is actually different in Ashkenaz versus Sephardo around this to some degree too, which is complicating. And it's in the Ashkenazi lands where they really start divorcing it from an external enemy completely, and like just applying it to an internal one earlier, and I think, if I remember correctly, than the Sephardi one. And yeah, so there's like so many complicated dynamics with this one prayer, and kind of how it's evolved. And there's so many versions of it still, right? I mean,
I didn't get into. I mean, there's like the Rambam's version of it as well.
Well, there's that, but like there's still actively prayed today, not just like the Yemenites who do like Rambam, sure, but like if you look among Ashkenazi communities, among Sephardi communities, among Yemenite, like of the different blessings in the Amidah, this one is still the one with the largest variance in wording, which is sort of interesting. And part of that is, the explanation, which is maybe not quite true, that this was added to the 18 to be the 19th
Oh, controversy, Yosef.
Well,
It wasn't that it?
The Cairo Geniza shows that that's not the case, right? That there were 18 blessings, including this one, and the one that they split was Yerushalayim and Mashiach, which we're not there yet. But the 18, but
But that's not the narrative, Yosef.
that's not the common narrative. No. Now there are people who have gone back and said, actually, we've read the Talmud wrong. Like the common narrative is based on a specific reading of the Talmud that understood this to be a late development about Christianity prayer.
By the way, just if we're being very technical, even the
Yeah.
dating of Shmuel Hakatan is questionable. If he's pre or post.
Yeah, he's somewhat technical. Yeah, I mean, we could talk about his dating and also like, did he actually write the prayer? Did he renew the prayer? Right? There's lots of technical kind of language arguments around, you know, the different manuscript versions of what that story is. And what he
I
did
was
with the story.
behaving, Ben.
Mhm.
I'm just saying, I was behaving. I was keeping it like
Right, you didn't branch off to other
I
narratives.
kept it PG this time. But okay, Yosef, go on. I'm happy. I'm happy. We good because we
Yeah,
got
no,
through it.
it's
So we
fine.
can continue.
It's just I think it's just an it's an interesting kind of case study. It's obviously of the prayers in the Amidah, it's the one that's gotten the most attention by far from non-Jews. Its Wikipedia page is like a battlefield. There are some really, really good works on the history of it because of all the kind of controversy that it has, you know, given. In fact, in some ways, outside of like this and the 16th blessing, like that's I think those two are kind of the ones that have gotten the most attention. And 16th for other more technical reasons, but like there's a whole book on this one. There's a whole book on the 16th. There's no entire book dedicated to any of the other blessings of the Amidah. There are ones that go through the whole thing and, you know, exegesis and chapters for each, but not whole books, right? That's a whole other level.
What do you think about this blessing, Stephen?
Yeah, I don't have any problem with it at all. I think I understand the context. Your explanation was really good, and it makes a lot of sense to me. I don't, you know, I'm not the poster boy for Christians, right? But but I still I think your explanation was good, and I have no problem with it.
All right, we passed the test. Yosef, what are your thoughts on? Well, actually, before I go to Yosef, Kirk, any thoughts?
No, I basically agree with the analysis provided so far.
Okay, he agrees. Ben?
Yes, I mean, I have questions. I mean, obviously, usually when we go through the blessings, we kind of talk about the terminology within it. So we have like cut off, uproot, crush, subdue, the insolent. You know, so there's different terms here that are being thrown around. So I don't know how particular we can be about those.
Sorry, what were you gonna say?
Well, I was also just like the general question about like right now we're reading it as malshinim, right? And we said it moved from minim to malshinim. It's like
right.
I don't know if I fully understand based on the narrative that we laid out why malshinim is why the informers is the most recent one that we have. Why is this the most soft?
It's not necessarily the most recent, but because there are early manuscripts. Usually, right? Most Sephardim, in their versions, use Meshumadim here, which are just people who seek destruction, Shmad. Right? No, that one, or like, to me, in some ways, makes a lot of sense. Malshinim, though, is consistently an issue, right? Like through, like we can talk about in the Inquisition, we can talk about, right? Like we can talk about in even the Holocaust, right? Like Malshinim has been like a consistent issue throughout Jewish history of people informing, you know, this person's practicing mitzvot in secret, this person's doing circumcision in secret, this person doing Shabbat in secret, this person, you know, these Jews are infighting, you know.
You see it with Daniel, right? That's how Daniel gets into trouble. He starts praying. They say, they try to do that little test on him. Then they rat him out.
Mm-hmm.
By the way,
sorry,
go ahead. Yeah.
No, that's a good explanation.
I think I might also say on the psychology reading side of it, like the as the mitzvah of Lashon Hara gets more and more attention over Jewish history, I think that also kind of builds like the case for Malshniim, where like the importance of this mitzvah and specifically it being called Lashon Hara, right? So like there's other versions of it, Rechilim and whatever. But like I think that also helps reinforce Lashon Hara is
there's a version of this that says Rechilim.
There's no version of this that has Rechilim.
No, but you have Al Tilech Rachil Be'amecha.
No, okay, no, but the 19th blessing, okay, but okay.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, so I think like there's no version that has Rechilim here. It's always Moshnim, but I think especially as it becomes psychologized and as this becomes like faults within me, and like people are doing kind of a virtue ethic of working on their tendency to do Lashon Hara, like to engage in gossip, libel, like whatever, any of those subcategories of improper speech. Malshi'im, I think, makes more sense for some, because there's not a lot of people identify internally with like there's part of me that wants to destroy everything. Like Mishum Adim doesn't make as much sense for the internal reading. Malshi'im, like that voice in your head that says maybe you shouldn't do this, maybe like kind of the demon on your shoulder type thing, Lashon, level of Yetzer Hara, Lashon Hara combo, right? I think it kind of becomes more pronounced in the psychological readings.
Yeah, I don't know. I was just going to say, sorry, I was just going to say that I don't know if this is directly related to what you're saying, but I do know that when you're talking about virtue related to psychology, both Aaron Beck and Albert Ellis, who were the founders of cognitive behavioral therapy, were Jewish, and they, I know they were influenced by the Stoic philosophers in Spinoza and a virtue ethical tradition. So if you're referring to the idea that there's a connection between virtue and psychology, I do know that there's a connection with that within the Jewish tradition, as I understand it, that your emotions are determined by your reaction to your circumstances.
Yeah, and that's also very strong in Maimonides, but even earlier in Pirkei Avot. I mean, Pirkei Avot has probably the most overlap with Stoicism, but like it has some pretty strong virtue ethic thought to it.
Well, Stoicism is a form of virtue ethics, as I understand it.
I mean, that's also Confucius is doing his thing at the same time. Just to your question. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to go to Ben's point. Yeah, so there are a lot. When I say there's a lot of variance in the phrasing for this, so they are around mostly the nouns here. Like, what do you call the bad parts? Do you call them Malshniim, Mushumadim, Minim? There's 12, I think, or 15 different words used. There's way more than I can do off the top of my head. Some of this language, like Kol Risha Krega Toived, seems to be taken out of something like the Yom Kippur liturgy, which is itself based on some verses about kind of evil disappearing from the earth. And there's also kind of the interesting.
I don't listen enough, or I didn't go through enough reps to make all these connections.
Yosef, all the wording here is very Yecharatu, like for karet, you want to be severed, to aker, to completely uproot, to mager, make sure it doesn't even happen, like push it away from me. Right. And even the double teshaberu shover, right there. Again, to me, I understood this as the sense of urgency also in this blessing, which is like, and again, like Yosef talking about how rampant and how much this was a problem also for the Jewish community. So this is like something that you're using very, very severe language about.
Yeah, it is interesting because some of these words you're going to see in Psalms, right? Like a lot. You're going to like the rate, like you're gonna see this, or not just in Psalms, but in Tanakh, all the words except for Tamager and Taker and Tamager are going to appear, I think, in Tanakh in relation to these ideas. Those Tamager itself is post Tanakhic Hebrew, if I remember. Taker could be there. I don't think it is though, but but you could understand why, right? Like now they're different levels, right? So there's like lopping off, there's uprooting, there's breaking, right? So there's sort of a, even to Magyar, right? There's Nagar, right? So there's another kind of reference to carpentry there. So right, so you end up having a little bit of an destroying trees theme throughout this. That is like very implicit, and you need to like really know your Hebrew etymologies to kind of get some of that.
Related to the Asherah?
I don't know if it's about Asherah specifically.
Because you can make a connection there with Ta'akar from Akara, which is saying like even fighting against the idea of, let's say, this like, this fertile power of like nature.
Yeah, I mean, usually, right? Usually in Tanakh, it's the evil, like the good guys are the trees, and the bad ones are like the wheat, chaff, what grass, weeds that are getting burned up. But then you do get places. I think it's in Yeshayahu, where you have like the tree that's actually has deep roots and the tree that has shallow roots, with the one that has more branches and less branches. And Job also references that. And like so, and then we also have the bad comparison to a tree for Nebuchadnezzar, right, where he's in the book of Daniel. So
I mean, at one level, this
could be
reminds
Asherah. It could be Asherah. It doesn't have to be Asherah. Like I don't think we necessarily have to go that far or like into that specific zone. But yeah, I mean, I think, and again, like anyone who's read the New Testament would immediately recognize this language as also like, hey, Paul's also picking up on similar ideas, right? Because he's talking about lopping off and grafting on branches, right? Like that's all sort of in the same milieu.
Wait, are you saying the grafted out? Like, are you saying that there's more of like a hint over here towards like a Christian idea?
No, I'm just saying that there's overlap, that they both understand their group, and this probably goes back to more to like messianic ideas of like my group is the remnant that is the shoot of Jesse, type. So like, which is like the tree that's going to be resprouting. So like, if your group is the tree, then you have to talk about, okay, what about the parts of the tree that go bad or that don't bear fruit, or you have to trim the branches, or you have to, right? So they're sort of drawing on really this tree metaphor that goes back to the prophets, I think, much more than the Asherah, but then they're like talking about tree maintenance to some degree. And how do you explain like the parts of the tree that go bad or that try to like damage other parts of the tree? I think that's part of what's going on, but I can see where you can go to Asherah here. Actually, the Tisha B'Av stuff, not just to Akira, but especially you like, and also sometimes you have to take a Dea in this list.
And Yechada too. And Yechada too. Sorry, also the
right. So you might think about when like Gidon destroys the Asherah, right, in Judges, it uses some of this language too, right? So maybe Asherah stuff actually that's growing on me. Maybe it's also using that metaphor.
I mean, on a simple level, can it also just be? And these are different tools. These are different things that you might need or might need to do. Just like it reminds me of Misad Shirim, but I forgot how we said it in English. The book that we went through by the Ramchal, that we talked about lefashpesh ve'lemashmesh, right? So like, there's different dynamics. You need to feel like try to identify the things that are you're not doing well, and then even the things that you do well, you need to fill them out in order to see if there's any cracks within those, right? So here as well, some things you uproot. You need to break them, and then you need to make sure they don't come back, and you need to, right? See, there's different levels. It's not just about.
One could also see this as like, are these different levels of increasing badness too, right? So Mal Shni'i might be the lowest. That might be another reason why Mishumadim isn't the lowest level here. And
right.
Mal Shni'im is like, people who try to inform on others shouldn't have hope, so they should like basically they'll stop their behavior. And then Risha, which is not a person, but like the concept of evil, I want that to disappear. And I'm not saying that the evil ones should stop existing, like they should die. I'm just saying they should stop. Like the evil within them should be lost. And then your enemies to be cut off, but like, what does that mean? Because again, it's not a wishing death on your enemies. It's like cutting them off from aid, cutting them off from hope, cutting them off from continuity, right? There's kind of questions. These are getting worse. And then as Zadim, we didn't really talk. We talked about it a little bit. We talked about different levels of sin, but Zadim are people who it says insolent here, but that doesn't. Someone who's
Do you know?
he's doing something on purpose. Lahachis, right? Like, it's not like this is a troll. Like, this is someone who, like, it's not that they, right? They're trying to piss people off and provoke them, and they're just evil for evil's sake, sort of thing. And like, we can kind of dismiss that, but at some level, they're also the highest, which is why they get the brunt of the destruction, because like that level of evil can't just, like, we can't just say, I hope that doesn't go anywhere. I hope that they don't, because like, they're not trying to accomplish anything beyond just like being like provocative and insolent and like piss people off, right? So like that has to be uprooted at a level that the other ones, like, if their ends no longer justify their means, they can just kind of cease without having to actually cease.
It reminds me a little, Yosef, of the Song of the Sea. Right? Hashem nedari b'koach tirat soyev berog gocha taros kamecha. Like, there's levels of destruction, sort of.
Yeah.
But just interesting, Yosef. There's Nusach. I'm looking over here. Nusach Eretz Yisrael for this blessing is Lemshumadim al ti tikva im lo yashuvu letoratcha hamenim karega yovedu אויבי עמך יחרטו, ימחו מספר חיים, ואם צדיקים אל יכתבו, ותכניעם במהרה בימינו, ברוך אתה השם מכניע זדים.
That's a much stronger, like that's a much more,
אם לא ישובו לתורתך, though, gives you like a way out.
Just to translate that for a second, right? Like that you're wishing that they don't even have the power to repent and to return to God's Torah, right? Like that, which is like a crazy thing, like, to think about liturgically. Like we wanted, but it's not so crazy in the sense of, it reminds us a lot of when God tells the prophets, hey, don't prophesy to them because I don't want them to repent. Like, it does use that language, but like that is a much more strong and disturbing version of this prayer.
No, listen, one second. It says, "Lemeshumadim al ti tikva," right?
Yeah.
Im lo yashuvu letoratecha.
Oh, im, that's important. Oh, okay. So actually, sorry, flip everything I said upside down. They shouldn't have hope unless they return.
This is the only one, actually, that does offer like an off-ramp. All the other ones actually don't offer redemption over here, which
okay, so that's good. Okay, flip it around.
Sefer Chaim is, I don't see, is that mentioned in any other nusach?
No, that's specific to Nusach Eretz Yisrael.
This is the only Nusach Eretz Yisrael I see. A lot of the other ones add Bechol Haminin v'Hamalshinim v'Hamosorot. They're the people that, like, that Mosrim, that basically give on information. It's like another version of a tattletale, basically, or a snitch.
To turn in.
Right, but the only one that uses this Nusach Eretz Yisrael is very interesting.
When was this Nusach Eretz Yisrael? When was this? What's the 2 sentences on the history of this?
Let's see.
You mean the ancient one, I assume, when you're quoting it. So Cairo Geniza pre, 10th century.
Yeah, this connects to the Kahir Geniza.
Okay, so probably between the 9th and maybe the 11th, early 12th century.
It's fine. You see it in... מופיע במקורות של התפילה הארץ הישראלית מן התקופה הביזנטית והגאונית, בערך בין המאה השישית לעשירית לספירה.
Okay.
Interesting, though, that this is an older one.
6th to 9th century for other people don't know Hebrew.
Right. Everywhere else, it's much more intense. Wow. This also shows, they're saying over here that this is why people also see it originally as not as a curse, right? Because like the fact that it even had in Lo Yashuvu L'Toratecha opens the the option for tshuva.
Mm-hmm. And which makes sense, because if the context of this and the next bracha are the follow-up of the previous one, and the previous one being we want justice, and justice means that bad people, cease being bad, and that whether they cease or they just cease being bad, you want both those options, right, as part of justice. And then the next one of and good people, are properly accorded, for their good. Then you need both sides of that, and that includes you would need the option of teshuvah.
That's true. Even though these enemies are not considered when people are making this blessing, no one's thinking about Amalek, for example.
No, this is for Jews.
Mhm.
That's the other right. This is just about Jews. This is not and it's even for our enemies. The enemies here are are Jewish enemies.
Right, that's what I understood when I was talking about when it refers to
That's
it.
which is my point to that why this starts as a sectarian thing, and then it becomes about Christians, but it really is to some degree it's framing Christians as sectarian Jews.
Correct. That's what we were saying. That originally,
no one ever says that this bracha is against Muslims. No matter how much persecution, right? Because it's such a different historical context, and it's very clear to me. That's part of the reasoning of how this came as a sectarian text pre the split.
correct, and it's built in. But that's what we're saying because of it's clearly aware of the fact that we have at the time Jews with other different beliefs with us in synagogue. And a way we could have them to stop coming is by forcing wording like this, which they won't be able to participate with.
Potentially. I mean, if someone reading this, if it doesn't specifically say your group, you can say, well, this just applies to the other group. And,
No, but if they were using Haminim and they weren't using Hanotzrim then because that wasn't the language over then for sure.
No.
But tough.
I don't think that this prayer. I know Daniel Boyarin agrees with you. He argues this point. I don't buy it that someone couldn't go to we had in our server, right? In Jacob's server, there was the guy who was a Muslim and he converted and he became a Noahide, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he would go before he became Noahide, right? He would go to Muslim services here. He was in a sect that everyone else would consider to be a heretic, that he was praying with, a kufr. And he still went, and he still heard them say, cursing their heretics. And I can't remember if he would say it with just a different intention, or if he just skipped that line. It didn't prevent him from going.
Yeah. For how long? He then decides to.
He did it for many years until he decided that it wasn't working. But that wasn't really the part that wasn't working for him. So whatever. I'm just saying.
I hear that.
I don't think it necessarily means that someone is going to stop showing up to synagogue because they think that the person next to them is praying that they repent and return from their evil.
Isn't
I have to head out, but
yes.
appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.
See ya.
See you, man.
I was just going to ask, isn't Mr. Daniel Boyarin a fringe person?
Daniel Boyarin is not fringe. If you, it's all right. What's always the question is the circle. If you're talking about academic Christianity and Second Temple Judaism and stuff, he is very mainstream. If you're talking about within Jewish thought and whatever, very
Jewish,
very few rabbis
Orthodox.
know who Orthodox, but even non-Orthodox, very few rabbis are gonna know who he is, right? He's not super mainstream, from a religious. Jewish
I just meant if he's fringe within the Jewish community.
Not particularly. I mean, I don't think his ideas are considered particularly fringe. It's very technical academic. Most people won't know who he is.
The topic of Christianity in Orthodox circles is more fringe.
Right.
Yeah.
The fact that he's an or Jew who goes to an Orthodox synagogue who's read the New Testament already makes him fringe in the first place from that perspective.
So he is fringe, just
I mean,
With
but
the-
Yosef, would that not make?
As fringe as any Jew who interacts with Christianity.
Correct.
So I don't know.
Which
Like,
Yosef, so you would agree that, and I say this about myself in my community, I'm for sure considered like a fringe person. And I would think Yosef is in some of his circles.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure that I am. I mean, I think. Anyway, whatever.
So I was just curious if we had some time to schmooze for a little bit, or
No,
I
I
do.
was going to say,
Yeah.
that too. When I was trying to figure out why it is that I took zero offense to that prayer the whole time, and it's partly because I was not a very, I've not been in the Christian world for very long, and for most of my life, I've been a scientist and I've been a vine grower, and to me that prayer reads like good vineyard management. I mean, completely. You're not. There's a disease on the vine and you need to get rid of it, and you're not mad. It's not like you're doing it because you're upset with it. It's because you want to grow a crop, and and nature's completely unforgiving, or God has a way, and so it just, to me, when I read that, it's like, well, of course you're gonna do these things that are gonna cause the vine to grow properly, because it's imperative that the vine grows properly, because that's what we're trying to do here. So it's a funny thing when I read that, like from a perspective of a vineyard manager. It's like, yeah, of course, that's what you're going to do. You clean the implement so you don't incorporate a virus into the vine, an informer that then destroys the whole vine because the virus travels through the vine. So
Yeah.
That's a loaded analogy, though. I'm saying, that's I guess that's fundamentally where we are right now, which is like, who are we on this vine? Are we ripe or not? Definitely with our Christian brothers and sisters, like we can't both be the grape, so to speak.
yeah.
That doesn't mean, continuing this analogy, that I don't see us being. I still see it possible for us to be living together in the same vineyard.
Yeah, it's just two different vines growing next to each other. You're not grafting them, right? Is the point. And you wouldn't graft grapevines anyway. You'd never do that. And when people do it, like with apple trees and things, it's always sort of like a very fringe element. You want it in your lawn. It's not like a production thing. You never mix species in a production, but you put different species next to each other. And often there's a benefit to putting different species next to each other, because then you get different disease pressures. You get, they work together to solve certain problems.
Hello, Yoav.
Hello, by their fruit you shall know them.
Yeah. I was just curious if we had some time for schmoozing, Hazir, if you got to get going.
I'm gonna go in a second, but Yoav could have control of here, and you guys could.
Yeah,
schmooze.
this is why I'm on, because this is always the minute that Chezi needs to have a life.
So I was curious, Yosef. Well, actually, I don't know if Yosef is here, so I'll wait
He's
for him
here.
to- Okay.
I'm here.
I was curious, Yosef. I know you said not to ask you questions about physics because you said you weren't very educated on it, but I was
Another
curious.
thing I could say about it all is that, it's a blessing where you're asking, Hashem to cause certain things to happen, and ultimately it's going to be His decision. And if we're all believing in God, then so if it doesn't really matter what the person asking for the blessing is, that it's God is going to either implement it or not. And if He does or doesn't, that's the right thing to do, no matter what religion you are.
Thanks, Stephen.
Yeah.
Sorry, you want to finish your question?
I was just going to ask, have you ever
Oh,
read
I'm
the
sorry.
book? And I know Yoav doesn't like when
I'm
I
not
ask people
hearing
if they've
something.
read books. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm
Okay, I
not
was
sure
gonna
Stephen fully. Okay.
Have you read the book A Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawking?
Oh yes.
Okay, and the reason I asked is because I read that book when I was much younger, and I was recently watching an interview on the Kurt Jaimungal podcast, Theories of Everything, and he was saying that, peace, Hezzy. and he was saying that Hawking did work where he found that you could recover the geometry of space-time from causality relations. And this is into a new theory of quantum gravity called causal set theory, which says that space-time emerges from causality relations. I'm curious if you have a perspective on that.
I mean, I remember. I'm pretty sure Wolfram has a very similar theory on causality relations in space-time. Kind of space-time emerging from them. I'm not sure if it's exactly the same one as whoever Kurt was talking to, but I don't know. I mean, so I don't know the guy who was talking to Kurt Diamondis. I don't know what his derivation of this is. I know that I found Wolfram's lacking personally when I tried to kind of work through this and tried to see how he was proving it. It was like geometrically it was very interesting geometrically, but like it wasn't explanatory. Now maybe that wasn't the goal. Maybe the goal was just kind of descriptive and not explanatory, but I didn't find like it actually had explanatory.
Yeah, I'll send you it. It was an interview with it's actually a woman. Her name is Faye Dowker, and she was talking about how it's the idea that basically you could get the curvature of space-time, which is Einstein's theory of general relativity, which is gravity as a result of space-time curvature, as I understand it, but from quantized space-time, and the quantized space-time is emergent from events below the Planck length. And it's the causality relations between these events which gives rise to the geometric structure of space-time.
Okay. That's not okay. So I've seen that's not super. It's not gonna be super different from Wolfram, though. I don't think he likes going down to sub-Planck lengths, because then you're basically in the realm of you can't actually. Everything there is purely speculative, right? There's
Right,
no
yeah.
like you're in a space where not only is it like not falsifiable, but like you are accepting like a level of just like pure speculation, never going to be false, like never going to be provable, and like okay, that's maybe a nice theory, but how do you design an experiment?
Well, so actually, I actually did look this up. Apparently, there are predictions that causal set theory in specific makes about things like the cosmological constant and such that are falsifiable, that if they were not true, it would prove that they're wrong. So it fits Popper's criteria of science.
Okay, so there's other predictions. Okay, interesting. You send it to me. I don't know. Off the top of my head on the spot, like I can only do so much.
Yeah, and then another question I was thinking about recently is so you said that within Jewish psychotherapy offices they have a lot of different theories, including cognitive behavioral therapy and stuff.
Sure.
Well, so I did know that I do think that within both Frankel's logotherapy and then cognitive behavioral therapy, there is an emphasis on basically emotions being a result of how you react to your circumstances, and that does seem to have a very Jewish flavor to it, to my understanding, more so than Fordianism.
Oh gosh, yeah. you bring this up after Chazi leaves. Chazi's father is the expert on how to do Freud through Jewish lenses and like understanding, where Freud's thought comes out of its Judaism. Like this is literally what he teaches. So I'm totally not the person to have this question for. I don't even know that Chazi is, but like you want to talk to Chazi's father. You want to talk about Jewish approaches to psychology, and because this is his world. I mean, he is a Freudian psych in Israel who teaches this stuff at university from an Orthodox Jewish perspective. But there's most psychologists, is my understanding. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. My understanding is that in Israel, the really big schools of psychology that are actually like practiced, like academic, are Jungian and trauma, like trauma therapy, and like there's a lot of work on for all of them, and kind of where they do and don't connect to Judaism, and where Judaism can enrich them further, where they overly distilled things, where they were influenced. There's like a massive amount of work on this stuff.
Yeah.
That's really like Chazi's dad's like wheelhouse. So I'm going to totally defer to Chazi. Probably can send you to some of his dad's papers. I think he's posted a couple in the server before. Like there's plenty of stuff to talk about there, but it's, like,
Yeah. Though I do know So the connection was recently I was thinking about cognitive behavioral therapy because in a philosophy community that I'm part of, they said they were going to be reading Spinoza's Ethics soon, and I've read excerpts of Spinoza's Ethics. And to my understanding, he anticipate cognitive behavioral therapy by saying that you have affect, and then how you react to your circumstances is what gives rise to emotions.
Yeah, which well, I mean, and that's but Spinoza isn't innovating there, right? Spinoza is directly drawing from Maimonides on that. So like, who himself is drawing from a kind of a mixture of Jewish and Muslim, like
And Stoic.
philosophy, which eventually goes back to Stoic, but like it's been through a lot of hands, since the Stoics. None of them are reading the Stoics in the original, right? No one has Marcus Aurelius. There, it is likely that some of the rabbis who wrote the Mishnah, like, were directly dealing with Stoics and Stoic texts and Stoic. In fact, we know that there was at least one Stoic philosopher who lived in Israel at the time of the writing of the Mishnah, but like who there's like recorded conversations with between him and rabbis. So like we know that there's something, but yeah, I mean by the time like Spinoza's getting it, like I don't think he's reading the Stoics. I think most of where he's getting this from, and I was not going to only be Maimonides, but Spinoza's weird because Spinoza, if you understand his metaphysics, he's really close to Kabbalah. He just like he went to the pantheism versus the panentheism side, but like in many ways he's still very, very, very Jewish in what he's drawing from. Though he is reading, obviously once he leaves, or actually even before he leaves the Jewish community, he's definitely reading more broadly. He is becoming like he has that kind of Renaissance, like broader education at the university, but like he's still like the Jewish stuff is still his major influence.
Yeah, well, the main reason that I know about Spinoza is because I'm recently in a Discord server that's related to Deleuze and like post-structuralism. And I think he draws from him.
Well, yeah, just so Deleuze, because both of them basically are like that God is nature, that there is nothing beyond nature. Deleuze is entirely getting that from Spinoza. He's just kind of he's refashioning Spinoza for a modern age in some ways. He does go further on some things. Yeah. It's been a long time since I looked at either of them like directly, but I used to do this. I might know more about that. Well, I don't know. I might know more about that than physics.
You said you might know more about that than Hezi?
Than physics.
Well, yeah, I mean, but physics is very philosophical.
Oh, yeah, sure. I'm just saying, like, I probably could have a conversation about Deleuze at a level that I don't know that I can have about quantum, or causal set theory or whatever. Anyway, how are you doing, Yoav? How's it going?
I'm fine, thanks.
Yeah, have things quieted down in Israel?
Well, you read everything in the news. Did you hear about assessing the situation by reading the calendar theory?
Assessing the situation by reading the calendar?
Yes.
No, go ahead.
All you have to know, I mean, we're talking about the current war, of course.
Yeah.
And what I said previously on this channel is the ceasefire started on a Wednesday, and it was for 2 weeks ceasefire. So it ended on a Wednesday. That Wednesday, when it ended, was Israeli Independence Day.
Mm-hmm.
And that Wednesday, when it started, we were already told, go back to life, students can go back to school, everybody can go back to work, can crawl out of your shelters, everything will be fine. 2 weeks passed and everything was fine. And then the ceasefire expired and there was Independence Day. Now, what happens in Independence Day is first that everybody's out in the garden having barbecues. Second, you have celebrations and you have ceremonies. And all the high brass, the prime minister and the speaker of the parliament, and also the prime minister of Argentina, they're in the outdoors celebrating Independence Day in ceremonies with a huge crowd and no cluster bombs arriving. and everybody, and the very fact they conducted the ceremonies means that they were absolutely sure everything is going to be all right.
Mhm.
Now, this is what I said earlier in this channel. Fast forward another week or two, this Monday,
Mhm.
it was Lag BaOmer,
Yep.
another holiday. And it's the holiday when we are doing bonfires. It's the bonfires holiday in Israel. So everybody's out, the ground outdoors, celebrating the holidays, making large bonfires. No cluster bombs arriving. Somebody was absolutely sure that first Wednesday that everything is going to be all right, and everything indeed was all right. So no matter what you read in the news and what the smart people are saying on any channels, the people who actually knows what is happening knew at least 3 weeks ago that as far as Israel concerned, it's back to normal. Now, it's not going to be as quiet for long, because there's going to be a settlement in the end. There's going to be a peace treaty signed in the end. And the day of the signing of the peace treaty, did Joseph hear anything I was saying?
I imagine he's probably watching the stream. He's not here anymore, but I think he's watching the stream.
Did you hear anything I was saying?
Sorry. Yeah, I got almost all of it. I just when you said 3.5 weeks ago, my connection dropped out. No, I hear that. It was not clear to me from the outside reporting, 'cause I only can see and hear so much from here. Like it sounded like they tried to restrict Meron, but it wasn't clear to me if it was because of the war or because of the disaster a couple years ago with the crowds. And whether
there is still a war going on with Lebanon, and Meron is very near Lebanon. It's just on the border.
Fair. Yes.
So yeah, I mean, the war in Lebanon is going on as fiercely as ever. That is the normal state of affairs in the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Hezbollah is very, very weakened. Still a threat on the settlements on the border, but life in the countries are always back to normal.
Even there, like I've seen conflicting things with Lebanon, because I think all of the bridges to southern Lebanon have now been cut off, and that's been like for over a month. They had evacuated tons of people. Some reports were saying like the only people who are really left in a lot of these areas are Hezbollah, but then they're also super weak. Like, how much fighting is there really? How much land is actually seized and like in Israeli control, and like where are those? Like, to me, like it's not clear to me like how that war is. I mean, I assume it's going really well, honestly, but like it's not clear to me then why there is so much fierce fighting. Like, are they trying to kill every last Hezbollah person who's left in southern Lebanon? Like, what's the goal? What's the terms of victory there? Of course, this government terms of victory, maybe I should never ask, but like, fair. Like, are there still missiles coming in? Is there still armament being fired from Lebanon into Israel anymore at this point? Or is it all just fighting on the ground in Lebanon?
It's mainly on the ground in Lebanon. As I said, you get a stray missile or to the northern part of Israel. Mm-hmm. Like in Meron. Meron is still in range.
Really close, I know.
But the weapons under the Hezbollah's disposal are getting more and more diminished by the minute. Now, as the exit strategy, there cannot be any. By the terms of the problem, it doesn't matter on this government or the other.
Right.
But
We're going back to the
Uh,
status quo of Israel holding land in Lebanon like it did for many decades in the past 35 years, 40 years, whatever
yeah,
it was.
but the problem is Hezbollah. Now, you can say that the stopping condition is when you completely disarm Hezbollah, because you can go on and on and on, and eventually you can get to a point where you completely disarm Hezbollah. But this is not a stable point because of the Sabra and Shatila affair. Once Hezbollah is completely disarmed, then a great massacre will occur against the Shiite population in Lebanon.
Mhm.
And if you want to prevent that great massacre, you have to leave some weapons in the hands of the Shiites. That means you have to leave some weapons in the hands of the Hezbollah. So the 0 point is not a stable point.
Yeah.
Or not the point you want to reach. You have to get to a position when Hezbollah still exists, still capable of defending itself, but not stronger than any other faction in Lebanon. And that's it's going to be a delicate game, and it's not going to stop, because power relations in Lebanon will be ever fluctuating.
Yes. It's not exactly, yeah, I mean, their government is not competent enough to hold it together, even if they wanted to.
The situation is Lebanon is inherently unstable. And
I mean,
it's
if Iran's ability to fund and arm Hezbollah is degraded enough, then it could, maybe be in some sort of dynamic equilibrium with some of these other factions and will not be the strongest. But that would require us to keep Iran weak enough to not be able to fund them more. And that's unlikely.
This is the situation at the moment. Iran now is weak enough. So, as I said, Hezbollah is not a real threat against the state of Israel as a whole. But
not anymore.
It's always a nuisance in the border. That's what happens when you have a common border. And this is why we are making this security strip. So at least this, small arms will not be able to fire across the border.
Mm-hmm. The Lebanese-Israeli talks for whatever agreement that they were working on, is that still going? Is that stable? Is the Lebanese state working with Israel on this?
I don't know, perhaps, but it is.
I haven't heard any updates.
There's no purpose in those talks, because
I don't know if that's. It depends if they're limited. It depends if they're limited to military or not, right? If they're wider than military, and they could actually be talks on, hey, cooperative exploitation of the oil fields or the gas fields in the Mediterranean, as opposed to kind of the sort of game that they've been playing. There could actually be real benefits to both governments.
No. It cannot be. First of all, a great part of the Lebanese army is Shia.
Right.
So Lebanon doesn't have an effective army. So you have politicians that you can talk to that have no army. The minute they are showing to be too friendly to Israel, they will be assassinated. There is no stable point.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. If Israel, whatever, they're the only ones who can do anything about it. It's just unfortunate that they're in that position.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, I think that with regards to the situation, I find solace and optimism, right? But we don't know what the future entails. I think Yoav here has a level of intellectual humility which many policy analysts don't have.
And also, Yoav is not steering this discussion. Yoav is babysitting the discussion.
They
Oh,
said,
fair enough. Fair enough. I actually probably need to get back to work anyway. But
okay.
no, thanks for the update. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'll send you the thing in Discord.
Yeah, I don't know when I'll get to it. I have a pretty busy week at work actually, but I'll try to
Okay.
give it a look when I can.
Now, Kirk, about your first question, absolutely, I'm struggling to even understand what you were talking about. It seems to me that you were assuming causality, and from that trying to derive conclusion of how the world works. Is it what you were saying?
So it was more no, not really. It was more like that you could derive the geometry of space-time from causality relations.
Okay. Causality relations between what?
So different events causally influencing each other.
Okay, so you're assuming that causality exists.
Yes, well, I believe causality exists. I don't know if that's an assumption.
Yeah. I also believe strongly in causality, but as far as I know, when you go to that level, you cannot trust your belief in causality. It, like any other intuitive assumption, might fail.
Okay. But for example, see, this is a can of Coke, and when I drop it, it falls to the ground. Well, that's
Yeah.
because gravity is causing it to fall to the ground.
Yeah, causality on our scale works, but on the foundation of the universe scale, it might not.
Perhaps. I mean, I can't prove a negative, but it seems as though we rely on the assumption of causality.
Yeah, I'm an engineer. I'm not a scientist. This is why I don't know what you're talking about. But as an engineer, I always trust causality.
Yes. And I think Yosef over here is also well, actually, he's both a scientist and an engineer. To my understanding, he's some sort of computer scientist.
And a rabbi.
Is he actually ordained?
No, but he's half a rabbi.
Okay.
Okay. Any more business?
No, that's about it. Good talking to you. See ya.
See you.